are Studio Ghibli films overrated? Now, before you get out your pitchforks, let's talk about that. What's up, guys? It's your boy, and today I'm going to be talking about Ghibli movies and why I tend to actually think they're a bit overrated, or at the very least, they're not for me. And I'm going to explain why I think that is the case, and maybe offer some alternate perspective as to some things that I would prefer over Ghibli films and why I prefer them over Ghibli films, in hopes that it kind of gives my overall perspective, and see if any of you relate to this or if you just think I'm outright wrong. Whatever the case, go ahead and leave a like if you like animated content, and maybe subscribe if you want to see more, because that's what we do around here. This is probably one of my more hot takes. I swear I don't do hot takes like this often, but I really am curious to see what you guys think, and I would love to see if you guys have any thoughts to leave them down below in the comments. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started on Studio Ghibli films and what I personally kind of think of them. So I'm going to start out with kind of how I got into Studio Ghibli films, how many I've seen, which ones I've seen, my thoughts on them, and then I'm going to talk about some other movies. So the first Ghibli movie I ever saw was in cinemas, because Studio Ghibli films have like event showings in a lot of cinemas, some near me included, and the movie that was showing in particular by the time I kind of figured out about these was Howl's Moving Castle. And Howl's Moving Castle is an interesting overall premise. You've got the girl Sophie, and Sophie kind of gets caught up with this guy, Howl, in his house, essentially, and kind of his moving castle, so to speak, and how kind of their dynamic works. It's kind of like you can tell that something's kind of up with Howl and what he's doing, and how that's all working. All the while, there's kind of turmoil within the place where Sophie's from. So overall, it's just kind of a fun little flick that tells the story of Sophie as she goes through and kind of ventures with this moving castle, where it goes, and then what actually goes on within the castle itself, and the different characters she meets there. So when I saw this movie, I will say admittedly I went in with high expectations, because I think everybody hears Ghibli and they hold a high standard for it. And so I want to say that up front, because maybe I was going in with an expectation that was too high and had it a little bit disappointed, right? Maybe there was an element of disappointment. But that's fine, because I think once you get past that initial disappointment or phase where it's like, maybe this just didn't live up to the quality that I was expecting, then when you go to see another one, you can kind of temper your expectations a little bit and have it kind of level out. We'll get to that in a little bit. But Howl's Moving Castle, I generally liked. I enjoyed it. I thought the film was good, not great. And the reason why I didn't think it was great was because it felt a little disjointed to me, right? It kind of moved all over the place, and really, I didn't see it ever get a focal point throughout the story itself, right? Again, that's not to say it was bad, but it all kind of, the ending felt rushed, because really I didn't feel like there was a good enough narrative build-up to justify the kind of rushed or odd ending, right? So when it all kind of came together, I walked out of the theater and I was like, oh, that was fun. That was a fun little movie, but nothing more. But you could tell that the semblance of quality was 100% there, right? The animation is impeccable, and you're going to find that among every Ghibli movie. And also the soundtrack. The soundtrack's really good. It went along with the story well, and you're going to find that also among most Ghibli films. Just really good environment, right? Where you really could kind of feel yourself being captured by the different goings-on in the surroundings. But then I went on to see another movie by Studio Ghibli once I had seen Howl's Moving Castle, and that movie was one that's a tad bit more famous. If you've heard of Ghibli films, you might have heard of this one. It's called Spirited Away. And Spirited Away, I watched, and I was like, this is considered the best animated movie of all time. It won an Oscar in the United States for Best Animated Picture. Even though it was a foreign film, it was that powerful to the critics that they decided that it was going to win Best Picture at an American award show, right? It was a big deal. Spirited Away was, and still is to this day, it's considered a classic by almost all metrics, and I saw it, and I thought it was good. And here's the thing. With Spirited Away, I can definitely tell why people regard it as highly as they do. Why they put it on that pedestal, because, again, these environments are great, these characters are great. You've got an adventure that is wholly unique to Chihiro, or Sen, and the environment that's going on there. It's a very memorable experience, right? From the initial plot of going into this whimsical world, what's going on there. But at the same time, for me, Spirited Away never felt like it was explained, right? Spirited Away, they go to this place, have a whimsical adventure, and then the whimsical adventure ends, and I really like the ending of Spirited Away. But at the same time, when it ends, I'm still left asking the question, but why? What was like the idea of the narrative supposed to be? Why did this happen? How did we get there? And a lot of like more kind of narrative messaging that maybe I just missed. Because the movie as an experience is really good. Again, animation, perfect. Music, perfect. But I just don't feel like it tells the best stories with Ghibli movies. And I understand that maybe you want to just be taken away in a whimsical fantasy world on an adventure where you can just lose your all thoughts of the outside world for a little bit and really just engross yourself in this world and become like just in awe of all the different characters and the environments, and that's okay. And maybe that is where I just don't understand it or feel kind of a disconnect with Ghibli. But for me, I've seen that. I've seen Spirited Away, I've seen Howl's Moving Castle, and I've also seen My Neighbor Totoro. And between all three of those movies, I can never really say that it felt like there was a point. There was, and what I mean by a point is that there's a reason for the adventure that they have, right? And maybe that is the point, is that there isn't a reason for an adventure to happen, that it's just spontaneous, and it can happen like that. But I say this all because I know that this, as a take, is not a very popular one, right? But I just kind of feel like I'm in the minority here, and I don't get it. And that's the reason why I bring it up here. And I'm going to bring up another couple movies that kind of get at, like, some ideas that I like more and I feel are better played out and better executed than Ghibli movies when I watch them as a viewing experience for me, just because I think that they set up a coherent plot a lot better, right? I'm going to start with A Silent Voice. A Silent Voice is an emotional storytelling masterpiece of a film, right? And it's because you have this setup, right? And I won't go into spoilers too much, but you have this setup with a protagonist who is troubled and another character who is having a struggle, and this troubled protagonist is just completely, has completely hurt the other person in their struggle, right? Because they start out troubled, and it's kind of a redemptive journey, right? That's a setup. That is a setup to a plot, right? And then we'll talk about another movie called Belle. And Belle, I don't think is as good as some Ghibli movies in terms of overall, but in terms of its story and how it sets it up, is a lot better. And it's also good as a coming of age tale as well. So what Belle does is it sets up this world called You. From the very start, it talks about you. And once again, I won't go into spoilers too heavy here, but essentially it is about what this kind of digital Ready Player One-esque world is like that is separate from the real world, but everybody kind of goes to it, right? So it sets up this premise as what happens in this kind of digital reality and how people take it, and what its importance is, how people deal with this fame when it can be anonymized and that kind of thing. So that is to say, it once again, from the start, takes an idea, a plot, gives a reason, and goes with it. Whereas Ghibli films, to me, by the end, once again, they go on the adventure, and I typically am left going, oh, that was pleasant, that was enjoyable, but why? I guess. So it's kind of difficult to explain, just for the simple reason of I still do like Ghibli films, and I hope you don't take away from this video that I'm some Ghibli hater, because when I'm ranking them on like a 1 to 10 scale, right, which I do for every anime that I ever watch, I still give Ghibli films typically an 8, maybe a 7, right? But in general, I still acknowledge them as good films because they are well made, and you can tell that there's a lot of effort put into creating these just whimsical, fantasy environments that are beloved, and reasonably so. But what I think would make a perfect Ghibli film for me is if you have those whimsical environments and a more cohesive plot line that ties it all together. But I could be wrong, because I think of the 3 Ghibli films that I've seen, Howl's Moving Castle probably had the most coherent story of all of them, and I think I probably liked it a little bit less than Spirited Away, so who knows? But that said, again, this doesn't mean that Studio Ghibli films are bad, but I'm curious to see if any of you guys hold the same opinion, or if you disagree with me, what you would say maybe I'm missing here, because I'd just be very genuinely curious. But that said, that is about all from me. I thought we'd just go straight in for a hot take this Saturday, and there you go. So with that said, I'll see you guys again here soon with another video, and that's about it from me. See ya.